Okmin. Welcome to my living room.
It's so lovely being in your living room. I feel like it's the first time I ventured out today, Lisa Marie. So
I
thank
know.
you for having me.
Absolutely. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from my kitchen office in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, how is Nashville? I love it down there.
It's wonderful. We moved down here about 3 years ago from Los Angeles. And my husband will always say the first best decision we ever made was to get married and to fall in love. And the second best decision was saying, let's go to Nashville. For everything you love about Nashville for like a weekend, that's what it's like here all the time. It's a great town.
That's awesome. Were you in the path of those terrible tornadoes?
We were about 7 miles out, and it's funny because that seems so close when you just say 7 miles, but it is like, thank God it was a lifetime away. So no, we thankfully were fine, but boy, I have a lot of friends who were affected by it. And still that's what's so hard because I know that the day the tornado happened, the next day and the next 2 days was when really when everything else started happening and really getting on lockdown. So this community's still trying to rebuild. And then all of a sudden we have COVID-19. And so they're an afterthought. And so it's been tough watching this town rebound from just trying to get the businesses back and the homes back. And now nobody can leave, nobody can volunteer, no one can help. So it's been a lot.
What's the lockdown situation like down here? Because I'm in Jersey City, so I'm in the epicenter. I don't think I'm leaving my house for the rest of the year at this point, to be
Yeah.
honest. That's what it
Yeah.
feels like.
It's funny. It's like, maybe a week or two ago, I would have laughed when you said it, but now, like, I get it. And I'm for sure not going to be leaving my house because Tennessee is one of the few states right now who are opening it up early. So I think it's next week, next Monday, that they're starting to say we're going to open up. And so we very much feel like it's not time to really just open everything up and get out there. So we're anxious to see how that affects Tennesseans because we still really haven't hit our peak, and suddenly to know that beauty salons and tattoo parlors and restaurants might slowly be opening, it's a little scary right now. So I like where you're at. I say stay in your living room.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk about how this is impacting your work because you are a Fox sportscaster and there's no sports right now.
Yeah. It's like everyone, it's so interesting because it's like whatever profession you are, it's such an interesting question, just saying, how is this affecting you? And not thinking about certain things and certain businesses because you're so consumed with your own. And it's interesting because right now is a time that usually I take some time off for my work and for my companies that I do on my own. So in terms of my NFL on Fox duties, this would be normal right now, getting ready for the draft and probably being at the draft, being in New York or, and being with the team. But right now it's we're just like everybody else, just waiting to see what's going to happen for the football season and putting all of our plans on hold. Now, I have a company for young women in sports. I shouldn't say young women, for women in sports. And so this time during the year, I usually am getting ready to pair up with NFL teams and do these boot camps. And so I take about 25 women, and these teams give me about 25 of their rookies, and we pair up for a couple of days. That's all completely changed because now you can't go into a facility. You can't go into a team. And I certainly can't get these women all together to fly in from around the country. So that's all on hold. And that I hate because this is my favorite time of year when I get to really help on both sides, hopefully help these young women um, really gain more confidence in themselves and each other, and also give some empathy for these young men that are starting their journeys. And on the flip side, it's a great time to get these young men as they're starting their journeys to understand that the reporters actually can be great allies. So I will miss that. This really is my favorite time of the year, and everything's on hold.
Yeah. So you're talking about GALvanize. That's how I connected with you over Twitter. We follow each other. I work for New York Giants radio. So, and there's other things I need to talk to you offline at another time, but I see what you're doing. I think it's so fantastic. What inspired you to give back in such a great way?
I love that you're with the Giants radio. I actually have done a boot camp with the Giants last year. That was one of my favorite ones. Um, you know, I never had a team of women when I was growing up in this business, and I started almost 30 years ago now. And the, I didn't have any women mentors, and I didn't have any women peers who were friends. Everyone kind of had their head down, and you were just trying to make your own path. You were trying to blaze your own trail. You weren't paying attention to who may have come before you, or who was doing it beside you or behind you if someone needed help. You were just back then so focused on making sure you proved yourself that you belong. And I just started watching all these young women get thrown into positions that I was like, "Ooh, thank God I didn't get thrown in that quickly. I'm glad I paid my dues in a smaller place. I'm glad I made my mistakes small. I'm glad I didn't start at Fox Sports." But I started seeing all these women who were, and I think if it was 10 years ago, or if it was actually, it was probably 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I probably would have been resentful of the women, kind of, well, you don't belong, and why aren't you paying your dues? But thankfully for my growth, it happened at a time where I wasn't judgmental. I was really protective and going, how can I help this? And how can I help that if they are thrown into these opportunities they might not be ready for, how can I help them be a little more ready? And most importantly, how can I give them something I never had, which was a great team of women, a network of women to lean on as you're navigating this world. And this, like, it's no black and white, it's all gray. And I know I learned a whole lot of mistakes in that gray and had to learn a whole lot from them. But I always think, gosh, I wonder what could have been, and the mistakes I wouldn't have made if I could have called another woman and said, how are you handling this? How did you handle this? How did you get through this? And I think I just was hoping to give them something I didn't have, and that it's just this great army of women.
That's so beautiful. So you broke in though at a time where you were one of the only women in a locker room. How did you do that?
Um, it was hard, and I think because the hardest thing, when I say it was hard, it was, I look back at that time in my life and I think how exciting, and I look at all the things that I was able to do, and the first I was able to have, and I love that, and it's pretty awesome. But when I step back and I look at that time, and not just boxes that I was checking, but look at that time, I also remember how lonely I was, and how sad I was, and how scared I was, because it just felt so overwhelming, constantly being told you don't belong here, and constantly being told to prove yourself, and what do you know? And I think it's really easy to say don't listen to those voices, but eventually what happens when you hear them over and over and over again, especially as women, that voice starts becoming your voice. And so all of a sudden, it wasn't that I was listening to 20 people tell me I was awful, I didn't know what I was talking about. My voice in my head started going, maybe you don't, do you know what you're talking about? And so I just think about how hard that time was, in terms of I was pushing so hard, I was selling myself so hard and trying to prove myself. And that took a long time to finally say, not only do I belong here, but I'm really good here. I'm
Yeah.
really good at this. And that took me probably till I was 40, until I really looked around and was like, what are you doing? You're here. You've proven that you're here for a long time. So maybe now you can sort of enjoy the journey instead of being so tight about it. So that was the biggest growth for me, was just having no confidence, and really finding it, and really believing it. And that was a big journey.
Yeah. And because, I worked with WFAN and then that transition to the Giants, I'm the only girl on the
Still,
team.
isn't that amazing?
So, and I love everybody and we've been together for so many years now. However, it is intimidating as a female to give your opinion on a football related topic, because maybe it's not weighted in as much gold as if it was coming from the male perspective. Like, I still get that anxiety sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not surprised. And again, I know plenty of women who are my age and who are, older than me, who still feel that way. It's hard. It's hard work to do. And so what I would say, what really helped me was, I stopped one. I really started having faith in my preparation. And I started really having faith in the fact that I had worked just as hard as every one of my male peers, probably harder, because we can't make a mistake. We can't ask a bad question. A guy can ask a bad question. If we ask a bad question, we don't know what we're talking about. They just ask a bad question, we're stupid. And so that fear makes us have to prepare extra hard. And I think that's good. I think eventually you have that confidence of what am I nervous about? I know as much as everybody. But I think what really changed for me also, especially when I started doing sidelines, was I looked around me, and like right now, my partner I travel with every week is Daryl Johnston. Now, Daryl's a three-time Super Bowl champion. I'm not going to compete with Daryl about about football knowledge, and I don't have to because that's not my job. But what I'm going to be Daryl at is how to build relationships and how to make sure that every single person that we're talking about, the everyone, all these stories going on the field, I'm going to make sure that everybody knows on my team that I get to those people to find out really what's happening, that I'll build those relationships. And so I looked around and said, okay, the guys have the knowledge down. That's what they're analysts. That's what they're here for. What can I do that I'm really good at, that I stand out in? And so that to me has always been it. I will build relationships like nobody's business. And so you'll never have to say, how do we find that out? I will call that person. I'll text that person. I've built a relationship. And that probably helped me get out of my head because I had so much confidence in how I did it and the results of doing it. And suddenly it felt really nice to create my own niche versus feeling like you're competing for somebody else's. We still have to know everything about sports. You know, we still have to know that. But I think now the difference is, hopefully, at least at my age, and I hope where you get to soon, is I don't question that anymore. I know I have all that confidence, so I don't have to prove it anymore. I know what I'm talking about. If I'm doing this for a living, I know what I'm talking about. And you stop proving that in your head, and it just lets you give your opinion, and it just lets you lean on what you're really good at versus trying to compete with what the guys are saying.
Exactly. So I guess you were always a sports fan growing up.
Like you, if I meet my Jersey girls or my New York girls, I'm a Chicago girl. So there's no gender. And so everyone always says, you know, how was it that you started watching sports or fell in love with sports? I'm like, on Sundays, we all watched the Bears, not the boys. Like everybody watched the Bears. That wasn't a gender thing. So as I know that we can relate, Chicago women are just as knowledgeable because we're not told that it's a guy thing or a girl thing. It's a Chicago thing.
Exactly. Exactly. What was your first Bears memory where like it hooked you that you wanted to work in the NFL covering the Bears?
Covering the Bears. What I would say is this. I'm trying to remember like what my first Bear memory was. And I remember he wasn't playing anymore, but I remember when I first got to Chicago. So it was year 3 of my career. My year 1, I was in Montgomery, Alabama. Year 2, and doing news and sports. Year 2, full-time Chattanooga, Tennessee. And then I went to Chicago. And one of my first assignments as a Chicago reporter was doing something at Walter Payton's house.
Wow.
And I think at that moment, truly, truly understanding the privilege of being like, how am I not only talking to Walter Payton, but how am I allowed in his house? Like how is this even working? Like how fortunate am I? And when I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee, I covered Michael Jordan, who played for the Birmingham Barons. And so being able to get to know Michael Jordan as a humble baseball player, but still as a Chicago girl, like my head was just constantly like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So what I'd say is it was probably, I didn't realize it because I was so in my head in the beginning. I don't even know if I remember what interviews I was doing because it was just so like, don't screw this up, don't screw this up, don't screw this up. But when I got to Chicago and suddenly the privilege hit me and suddenly the I can't believe this hit me. And I still feel like that when I do Bears games at home, when I get to go home and everybody gets kicked off of the field right after the anthem or right before the anthem at Soldier Field, I always look around and I can't believe I'm allowed on. Like everyone's kicked off and like, I can't believe I'm sitting here on the field at Soldier Field. So that still gives me goosebumps every time I'm down there.
Well, I feel the same way with the Giants. I grew up a lifelong Giants fan, diehard. And to be able to work for the team, even on a limited basis that I am, seasonal, just for the home games, it doesn't, and I just completed my 12th season. No, even longer, 15 something. I don't even remember now. And it doesn't get old. When I see that field, I still get a rush.
Isn't it? And I always wonder, because I still get that at Lambeau. I still get that, at the older stadiums when you walk in Buffalo, I still get that where you walk into history, at the old Giants place,
I
I used to
know, I
feel that
miss it
too.
so much. Don't get me started on that. I miss it.
Sorry, Lisa Marie.
Oh, it's
But
okay. It's not
that's
your
what's so
fault.
great about being a sports fan is like you have that home base that's so awesome, but I still love that every stadium you go into or, depending, I used to travel so much with the NBA. So any arena you walked into, to be able to do a Knicks game at the Garden with the lights low and just when it was Jordan and like it just, I just look at that time and go, um, how amazing that we're allowed into these moments like this. Like how amazing we can go into these stadiums and that we can go into these locker rooms and we can get to know these guys going through it. I'm blessed. Like we are so fortunate.
So is football kicking off this September?
I'm going to say no. I
Mm.
just I don't see I don't see how it can. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday who's a musician and all he wants to do is get back on tour. And I'm like, I just can't see how we put thousands of people together right now. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen without fans. But it just really when I start thinking about how they're going to have to create these bubbles for each team and to still allow people to have dozens and dozens of people in a facility right now, I just can't believe that's going to happen by August or this summer for a camp unless I guess everything should be qualified with unless there's a vaccine, but they just keep saying it's going to be so long from now. So I don't see how we're ever going to be able to put a lot of people in the same space until we make some progress.
Yeah, and then you think about the production side too. If football happens in a fanless stadium, how is that going to affect your side with the television, my side with the radio? Would I
Oh,
even be allowed to do anything? Because,
100%.
right?
That's everything. I just had a Zoom talk with my NFL and Fox team. So it's, like 9 of us. And that's what we were talking about. Like, how is this going to change our business maybe forever? Not just, right now. And we were saying we travel every Friday to the home team and we spend the day going to practice and having all of our private production meetings. And then Saturday we go to the hotel of whoever the visiting team is and we do all our meetings with them. And we were like, how are we going to have meetings anymore? Are they going to allow us in there to talk to people? Does it wind up being like same thing for you guys? Do we just all wind up basically, coming the night before and then just showing up and doing a game and not being able to go into any facility, not be able to see anyone and do all Zoom calls and try to talk to people and get your information that way? I just know that for both of for all of our industry, there's going to be some really, really big changes. And we all keep saying, when are we going back to normal? I'm like, I think there's going to be so many things that have never been normal that will be.
Yeah, it's so
It's
bizarre.
scary. I know,
It's
right?
very scary. But at least we have the draft to look forward to tonight.
Yes, yes. And the one thing that is really normal right now, as normal as it can be. And what's kind of fun is I love that everybody's looking forward to this one, like in a different way, but not just to see who's going to be picked, but also what are the living rooms like and what kids are going to be in there, what dogs are going to be barking. There's something so sweet about this that it feels like the most real draft that we've ever had.
Yes, it's, you know what, it's stripped down to what it is, what it's supposed to be. The NFL Network has blown it up to be the Academy Awards for a few years now. But
Totally.
it's about, and the outfits and the crazy suits that these guys wear. And now it's just about these kids getting the opportunity of a lifetime and seeing the reactions, and that's it. And that is beautiful.
Isn't that is so nice? And there's something to the authenticity of that instead of having these contrived moments, that kind of on the stage and how do you feel? But just to be like in their homes with if these kids are allowed to be with however many members of their family, but there's something really authentic and really kind of great about this. Like you said, just it's sort of stripping it all back down again. And I love this time of year and I love the bigness of the draft, but there is something nice about going a little bit old school and making it more about truly the connection and about what's happening versus just the big lights and the big stage and making it the Academy Awards.
Exactly. And same thing with what we're doing right now and with our medium too, just stripping it
Right.
back without the lights, the audio, the HD camera, it's just us with the laptop.
I mean, I was so thrilled to do this just to, just have a reason to shower today. And just, it was so nice to just get up and be like, oh, I actually I have to at least wash my hair. But there is something wonderful about that. And also using this time meaningfully and purposefully. And
Yes.
so I know I'm trying to do that. And those are two words I start my day with on my big whiteboard. If I was in my husband's office, you would see a giant wall behind me, and it's just, a huge whiteboard. And I just said purposeful and meaningful. And every day, trying to make sure I'm doing something from both of those. And sometimes those are big things. And I did a virtual GALvanize boot camp for about 300 women, and that was purposeful and that was meaningful. But also, the last thing we do every night is we walk our dog, and adding Moscow mules to that walk was very purposeful and very meaningful. This conversation is very meaningful. But so I say all of that saying I'm having a conversation tomorrow on Zoom with an NFL team with all their coaches, and I have to do a presentation on how do you build relationships right now. How do you get deeper with your players, especially your rookies, when you can't see them?
Yeah.
And so what I'm loving is from the sports side and from just a human being side, how do you make sure that you don't feel isolated in isolation? How do you make sure that we feel connected as we are distant? And I think there's some really awesome things right now that we can do to make sure that every conversation we're having is meaningful.
Yeah.
Versus now I think about all the wasted calls I have checking in with people, and you don't really even talk about anything. And now all we talk about is what we're scared about and what we're nervous about. And there's something really nice about that.
Yeah. And the younger generation, those kids, maybe even in high school with these aspirations, college, this is a great time to hone your skills.
Isn't it so true? And especially, I've been talking so much to my nephews about that, who are 20, 21, and 15, and 14, and 6, and 18. So they're all kind of in there. But this is the most that they really have been connected to people, because people are making them do this versus just this. And
Mhm.
so I think for younger people too, to understand right now, um, using this time where you can reach out to anybody and ask for a conversation. You can reach out to anybody and ask for an interview. Most people have the time. And I keep saying to everybody I can, start building relationships right now. Start reaching out and saying, in this crazy time, I know you have no time, but I would love to make sure that I'm building a relationship with you. And can I get a couple minutes on a Zoom call? Can I do an interview? Can I get to know you? And I don't think we have the time normally to do that.
No.
So to me, that feels like such a good purposeful thing, which is, what are you doing right now to make sure that you're taking advantage of people who have more time than normal, and build even better relationships because of it,
Yeah.
especially starting with the young ones who I, I just sometimes don't think that they build relationships the way that some of the older generations had to.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Thanks, Lisa Marie.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I have interns, college interns that work for my company, and it's a struggle, because they interview so well, they give a great first impression, and then it just like falls apart a lot of the time. And it's like, I see it in you, like, get off the phone and work and be in the moment.
Isn't that's what's so funny about people saying that they're so bored right now? And it's like, I just keep being like, because for the younger generations, you've gotten to be entertained all the time, like all the classes you got to go to, and all the after school activities, and all the games, and all the things. And now I'm like, if you can't sit at home all day and find ways to grow and find ways to get better, then you got some soul searching to do. If you can't be by yourself, and I'm not saying that for 5 weeks, that's a challenge for everybody,
Of course.
but especially for the introverts, this is a nice push, because I have a lot of friends who don't mind this, that they're normally not around a lot of people, and like that they don't have to be. And it's a good push for them to make sure that they don't hide in a hole. And for the extroverts, how do you make sure that you're getting something meaningful out of this versus just kind of calling everybody and just kind of having no, I don't know, maybe some no
Purpose?
substance.
Yeah, and focus, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Laura, I can talk to you all day. This was so fun. Where can people find out more about you?
They can find out more about me at Laura Okmin, at GALvanize is all my stuff, or at GALvanize Life and at Laura Okmin. And I also have my website, lauraokmin.com, and that has an email if anyone ever has any questions about GALvanize or anything. But I've so enjoyed this, Lisa Marie. Thank you for having me in your living room.
Yes, well, I hope to see you at MetLife, maybe not this season, but next season. I
This
know.
season, let's say this
Let's
season.
say even if it's February, I hope I see you then. I know.
I will continue to knock on my head and actually knock on real wood, so it counts. Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing this. I so appreciate you.